Anything from yesterday's reading?
Juhu land became ISKCON's.
Yes.
Gave the Juhu land back to ISKCON after an agreement with Prabhupada.
Yeah, finally, Mrs. N. So she signed up, and even I won't remember so many things.
Mrs. N transformed suddenly. She started. She
Yeah,
just.
that's wonderful. And Prabhupada said, don't do. I will take care of your whole life. Whatever time you are, we will take care. Prabhupada was very, very genuine. No one else in the world except Vaishnavas can think about like this, because they are not upset. They were very forgiving. And you all read mostly yesterday, right? I mean, I was there, yeah. What else? Mr. Srikar, Indian ambassador to England, attended the Janmashtami festival, I see here. And
Prabhupada also did deity installation in Paris, and he named the deities there Radha Pariseshwara.
Pariseshwara, okay, Radha Landeswara. We will have Radha Delavereswara. We already say Jagannath is our Delavereswara already. That's good. Nice. Anything else? See our memory. Okay, that's fine. So we read this. This is where we ended. Are we supposed to read here?
No, we stopped at where we acquired the land. The land was legally.
Oh, we stopped where he acquired the land. So we have to read from Giriraj Swami's. Okay, no harm. Let's do this. Giriraj, the room was hushed during the signing, and everyone felt as if a momentous event was taking place, just as if two great world powers were signing a treaty. After Mrs. N signed the document, everyone silently watched the papers being passed. She started to cry. Tamal Krishna Goswami quietly asked her why she was crying, and Mrs. N replied that just that day Mr. Mathur had come and told her he had found a buyer for the land for many more lakhs than we are paying. Amazing. Look at the attachment, the degree of attachment. Oh my God. I'll repeat that again. Mr. Matter had come and told her he had found a buyer for the land for many more lakhs than we were paying. Actually, as we were watching Mrs. N, we were thinking that she must be remembering all the events that had taken place, the wrongs that she had done, the death of her husband. It was very intense, like a combination of months of struggling. So for Prabhupada, the devotees and Prabhupada's well-wishers, their dreams and desires and efforts over the past many years were being fulfilled. Srila Prabhupada asked the devotees, informed the newspapers, and he invited everyone into the hall outside his room for a feast. Mats were rolled out in two lines, and devotees brought leaf plates and placed them in front of everyone. The devotees began serving the various dishes in the two rows of seated guests. Prabhupada was standing. Now let us start, he said, as he supervised the serving. The devotees had prepared several courses, rice, dal, many varieties of pakoras, such as potato, cauliflower, and eggplant, potato sabji, wet cauliflower sabji, pappers, burfis, laddus, cham cham, milk sweet, vermicelli kheer, halwa, and a lime drink. It was a festive and happy occasion. Mrs. Warrior, a tenant on Hare Krishna land, the devotees were all saying Jai after the signing, and all of them were very happy. Then Prabhupada gave a lecture about the Bombay project. He gave an idea to all the people of how it would be all marble. There wouldn't be a single thing that wasn't built from marble. Some were asking how it would be possible for everything to be marble, and Prabhupada explained that it was possible and could be done. He was visualizing the project, and everyone was thrilled to hear the way he was describing it. It would be like one of the seven wonders of the world. People would be attracted from all over to come and see it. It would be a landmark in Bombay. Prabhupada explained the whole project as if he saw it in the mind's eyes. And he said that after it was constructed, it will be more than what we would visualize. It would be fantastic. After the late feast, when everyone had departed, Prabhupada returned to his room. Leaning back at his desk, he exclaimed, "It was a good fight." So everybody's ready. The land is legally ISKCON's, and all the Giriraj Swami Maharaj is sharing his observations there. Everybody is so grave and quiet, just everything is going on. And Mr. Sen uh, started crying. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked, he was, why is he crying? Okay, what is the reason? Is he feeling guilty, or what's he feeling, or what is the reason? So now it's funny thing, look at the material. He said, oh no, somebody, Mr. Matar had come and asked for that land, more money for that. More money. She's crying because she's getting, she could have got more money. The attachment, lust is always, it's not very easy to give up after so much of efforts also. And he's saying that for devotees, it was a joyful moment, because it was after many years of struggle, and this is being fulfilled. Now, Prabhupada put advertised in newspaper as a groundbreaking. Even though groundbreaking was done, as a big feast was served on this occasion. All these preparations were made. Prabhupada said, let's start serving. And they were sitting in a Vedic style, and they put their mats and sat on the floor with leaf. Mrs. Warrior, she is also explaining about as a tenant at the Hare Krishna, saying how devotees are cheering, saying Jai. And after the signing, they were very happy. And Prabhupada gave a lecture, and then he mentioned about he envisioned how the project will look like. Well, for that time, that project is a very big, very big. For that time, don't say, leave it. Yeah. For that time, he was a very. I can share with him. Rajesh is asking link. He envisioned how that will look like and everything he envisioned. Everybody is wondering, how Prabhupada is saying this will come here, this will come here, how everything can be possible in marble. But Prabhupada said, no, it will look wonderful after this is done. So Prabhupada rested after the feast was over, and he said that it was a good fight. So basically, there's a deep satisfaction. You all know how much struggle he has to go through. Nowhere else, the amount of fight he had to go. So then, I didn't read after that, right? Go and read it.
Later, Prabhupada would cite the story of the fight, for the Bombay land as evidence that a person in Krishna consciousness has no problems. Now he has spent in Bombay 18 to 20 lakhs of rupees. He said, Months later, while on tour in Europe, the property is actually worth 50 lakhs. People are surprised and some of them are envious. But if you come, you'll find that it is a very, very fine place. It's just like a paradise garden. 20,000 square yards, and we have got 6 buildings. So actually, when we come to Krishna consciousness, there are no problems. Surely the land was full of potential, but how could he say there had been no problems? No problems meant that Srila Prabhupada saw how Krishna personally arranged things for his devotees. When he needed money, it had come in an amount that ordinarily would have been impossible to collect. And the formidable opposition Krishna had removed. Prabhupada had no organized means of income and little political influence to fight persons like Mr. and Mrs. N. But because he was surrendered to Krishna, there was no problem. All the problems of the world were created by the non-devotee, who defied the injunctions of the Supreme. Anyone who is in Bhakti Yoga, Prabhupada said, he can understand that all problems are solved. We can practically see. And yet he had to tolerate the problems created by the non-devotees. For almost 2 years, he had struggled to secure the land for Krishna's service, whether in Bombay or elsewhere. He had to worry over how to help his inexperienced disciples, who were ill-equipped to handle the ploys of the opposing party. It had been an ordeal, a test of patience, a challenge of courage. Because he had not been bewildered by Maya illusion, there had been no problem. Prabhupada showed by his example that if one strictly follows Bhakti Yoga, one is not touched by the modes of nature, by Maya. The same transcendental science he constantly taught in his lectures and informal discussions. He also personally demonstrated. He was faithful in Krishna consciousness and all his problems have been adjusted. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that if one surrenders to him, one easily overcomes all problems. The devotee understands that the problems of Maya can be overcome by surrendering to Krishna, by surrendering to the orders of Krishna's representative, the spiritual master. So Prabhupada used this example of the story of fight when months later in a tour in Europe, and how even though the property was worth 50 lakhs, devotees were able to get it in 18 to 20 lakhs. And Prabhupada said how it was such a nice place. It was like a paradise.
And he got for 16 lakhs.
18 to 20 lakhs.
We have spent 20 lakhs, 18 to 20 lakhs in other way. I think they were constructing, I think the deal was for 16 lakhs only. Yeah.
20 lakhs. And so the land was like a paradise garden with 20,000 square yards, and they have 6 buildings. So he's using that example of saying that when one comes to Krishna consciousness, there are no problems. Meaning that even if there is a problem, a devotee, Krishna will personally arrange things for his devotees by removing that obstacle. Because even when he had no money, and it was actually impossible for them to collect it, they were still able to collect that money and pay off the amount. And even in the fight with Mr. and Mrs. N and the C company, Krishna helped in taking out all those obstacles. And it's saying that anyone in Bhakti Yoga, he can understand that all problems will be solved through Krishna. We can see through all these examples. And Prabhupada had to continue. Still, he had to continue to tolerate problems created by non-devotees, and not just that, not all of his disciples were fully experienced as well. There's some inexperienced disciples, especially in India. It was hard for them to get fair deals because they're Westerners and they're trying to take advantage. And so Prabhupada was able to overcome all this because he was not bewildered by the illusion, Maya. And therefore, he had no problem in winning and being able to continue with his service and the Krishna ISKCON. And this shows, Prabhupada is showing this example as if when one strictly follows Bhakti Yoga, he or she is not touched by the modes of nature or by Maya. And whatever the Prabhupada teaches, he personally demonstrates to everyone as well. He's not being a hypocritical character. And he was always faithful. He's always faithful in Krishna. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that one surrenders to him, all his other problems will be overcome. And one should surrender to the orders of Krishna's representative, who is the spiritual master.
Very nice. What is that? Mukam karati vachalam pangam langayate giri yat kripatamam bande Sri Gurundina Tarane. That's it. But if spiritual master's mercy is there, we can overcome the greatest obstacles. I was saying 20,000 square yards. So is 20,000 square yards is 180 square feet. 1 yard is 3 feet, right?
Yes,
No,
Prabhu. Yeah.
is 180 square feet, right? But 180,000 square feet is a very huge. Wow, 9 lakhs they got. Huh?
It's 4 acres.
4 acres, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. His Brajras Prabhu is there. Is it a very big place? I went there, but I don't remember. You know, when you see, you don't realize it's so crowded. Now it's like millions of dollars, maybe 15, 20 million or something will come now.
Yes,
Jewel
Prabhuji.
land we are talking about.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Very big, huh?
Yeah, not very big. It is 4 acres only.
Yeah, for Bombay, 4 acres is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, but the location is very prime. You know, all Bollywood and the ocean is nearby, and it's like very, as you said, you know, the property is very costly.
And disciples were so frustrated that time. Then they didn't want to take this place. Even the Prabhupada didn't want to leave. Disciples were leaving that place. The
Yes.
same thing happened in I think I don't know if it'll come on this or not in Bhubaneswar, ISKCON Bhubaneswar, when it was given to His Holiness Gaur Gobind Swami Maharaj, it was a forest. They are saying.
Yes.
And only him by himself he stayed there and developed Gaur Gobind Swami Maharaj. And now it is one of the prime place of Bhubaneswar city. Anyway, Prabhupada knows.
For
how
this
it-
Bhubaneswar land, Prabhuji, I met one person. He's the president head of Mukesh Ambani, Reliance, and he came to the temple in Mumbai, Chopati, and he said that when he was young, he used to attend Gaur Govind Maharaj's lecture. He's from Odisha. So during his college days in Bhubaneswar, so he was saying that the land was very new, and Maharaj was staying there. And later on, then after becoming a successful man, he again visited, and the place is totally transformed. So he was appreciating.
That's nice. Hope he can bring something from Ambani's, if they have something. Okay, AJ, please read.
Had to give me the part with the Sanskrit, right?
You can try today.
Now that the land was ISKCON's, Prabhupada could proceed to enact his vision. In attempting to construct buildings and propagate Krishna consciousness, he would meet more Maya-created problems, no doubt, but the greatest struggle had been won. The gorgeous temple of Sri Sri Radha Rasavahari would manifest. In the future, devotees and guests could come to India's gateway and stay in a first-class hotel at Hare Krishna land and conveniently imbibe the spiritual atmosphere of the temple. And the devotees, as long as they did not forget Prabhupada's example and instruction, could successfully utilize the facility in the spirit of service of Krishna. The price Prabhupada had paid in tolerance and dependence on Krishna would never go in vain. What Srila Prabhupada produced by his tolerance would not only was not only the facilities and the ongoing mission at Hare Krishna land, but a monumental living example of the behavior of a sadhu. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila Deva describes a sadhu, Titiksava Karunaka Surdaha Sarvadehanam Ajita Satrava Santa Sadhava Sadhu Bhushana. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. Because the sadhu is tolerant, Titiksava, he is undisturbed by the difficulties imposed by material nature. In Prabhupada's attempts to secure the Juhu property, he had met with enemies and difficulties, and he had been tolerant. Prabhupada had sometimes said, "You have to tolerate." And a sadhu is not only tolerant but merciful, Karunaka. When ISKCON's provisional temple had been attacked by the police, Prabhupada could have considered it a signal to leave the place and give up trying to help such ingrates by bringing them Krishna consciousness. Why go to such botheration? What's the use of trying? He had already nearly 100 temples outside of India. If the people of Bombay didn't like Krishna consciousness, then why not go away with them? Why not go away and leave them to their fate? But no, as a genuine sadhu, Prabhupada was merciful. Because he had come to deliver the compassionate message of Krishna consciousness, he had to tolerantly give the message to everyone. People were misguided and were living like animals, only for sense gratification. And by the laws of karma, they would suffer in their next life. Seeing this unhappy predicament, Prabhupada had felt moved to help these fallen souls. Seeing this unhappy predicament, Prabhupada had felt moved to help these fallen souls, even if they were unappreciative. Srimad Bhagavatam also describes a sadhu as Sarda Sarva Dahanam. The only desire in his heart is the welfare of all others. Being unbound by nationalism, he thinks of himself not as Indian or American or even as human being, but as eternal spiritual soul, meant to benefit all living entities. A sadhu, Srimad Bhagavatam describes, is Ajata Satru, because he never creates enemies. Although envious persons may declare themselves a sadhu's enemy, a sadhu behaves as the best friend of everyone, trying to bring everyone to Krishna. Because Prabhupada was trying to spread Krishna consciousness, envious persons would continue to oppose him. But as he sublimely showed in Bombay, what can be done? We have to tolerate. Thus, even before any foundation were laid for buildings, Prabhupada had already fully demonstrated all the ornaments of a sadhu, remaining peaceful, santa, and dependent on Krishna, he had become victorious. And for whoever serves such a great personality, Srimad Bhagavatam states the door to liberation is open. So this section kind of just recaps how Prabhupada, through all the troubles he went through to get this temple opened and to get this property and all of that. At every point of it, he demonstrated all the behaviors that Srimad Bhagavatam says are the characteristics of a sadhu. So it talks about that he was tolerant, merciful, friendly to everybody, no enemies. He's the best friend of everybody, right? I think it says.
That's correct.
Yeah. If you can scroll down a little more.
Suhruda means he is everything. Suhruda means well-wisher.
Yeah.
Of all Sarvadehinam. It's all these living entities, irrespective of American, Indian. And this is the Vaishnava qualities, Titikshava. Yes, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I was saying, he was saying, even though he was confronted with people trying to, he's confronted with enemies, but he said, you know what, we have to tolerate these people. And, when not only was he tolerant, but he was merciful as well, right? When they came in and destroyed the temple, or the police were hassling them, the smart move would have been, forget these people, right? They don't deserve this. But he said, you know what? No, this is, they no matter what, these people need Krishna consciousness, so we're not going to go away. And again, it if you scroll down some more, and he had come to he was merciful in the sense that he came to tell everybody about Krishna consciousness, and he knew, hey, these people are going to have to deal with the laws of karma, but he's going to help them the best way he can. And again, he said the only desire he had was to help everybody else, and he didn't see himself as Indian or American or even as a human being, but as spirit soul, and he was there to benefit everybody. And at the last part, he says he never created any enemies. He may have been the enemy of some, right, of his of the people trying to stop him from building the temple, but at no point did he ever view them as his enemies. And because his ability to demonstrate all these characteristics, he kind of meets the definition of a sadhu per Bhagavatam. And it says, and anybody who serves somebody like that, who serves a sadhu like that, the door to liberation is wide open. It's there's benefit for serving Prabhupada as well. So
Haribol, very nice. So with this, we are finishing this chapter of developing. Oh, yeah, developing Mayapur project. It is long, but we covered the Bombay also. It's a big thing. We'll begin with the next one. Let's see what comes. Magic. Beginning the temple of Krishna Balram. Now comes the Vrindavan. Yeah. Second two, please read.
Hare Krishna. April 1972, Srila Prabhupada was meditating on constructing his Krishna Balram Mandir. In April of 1972, he asked his disciple, Surabhi, who had drawn the plans for the Bombay Center, to execute drawings basing the design on Indian Renaissance architecture. Prabhupada liked the Govindji temple located near the original Govindji temple constructed by Rupa Goswami. He liked its open courtyard surrounded by many arches and its front steps leading up to the deity darshan area. He suggested that some features of the temple be incorporated into his temple. Surabhi, with the assistance of a Vrindavan architect, executed the plans and Prabhupada approved. This will be the grandest temple in Vrindavan. Many high-class gentlemen in Delhi who are also devotees will relish the chance to live with us on weekends, and it will be for them just like Vaikunta. You must construct something wonderful, otherwise it will be a discredit to you American boys. That will absolve the position of America and India. And this Vrindavan project is one of the most important of ours in ISKCON. Although Gurudas had been careful to keep in touch with Prabhupada by mail, he had neglected certain important matters in Vrindavan, such as digging a well and getting city approval, things Prabhupada had repeatedly asked for. In the summer of 1972, Prabhupada wrote, "From the beginning I said I simply wanted a temple built in Vrindavan just like Govindji's temple. And there have been so many letters, but that has not been done. Never mind, now I like that plan of Surabhi's." 2 weeks later, Prabhupada again wrote Gurudas on the same point. "I wanted a temple like Govindji. Is it so difficult that for the last 6 months you have consulted so many engineers? Any ordinary engineer could draw up the papers and get it passed. There has been so much unnecessary correspondence. To build a temple in Vrindavan should not be so difficult," Prabhupada taught, and he became impatient with the delays. Concerned that the devotees and architects not make the building too costly, he said that they should go ahead with the plans he had approved, even if the building were to be a little cheaper than in the original plan. He was concerned that the competent disciple oversee the work so that ISKCON didn't get cheated. So here we are reading about the Krishna Balram temple. In April of 1972, Prabhupada asked his disciple, who had been the architect for the Bombay Center, to come up with a plan for the Krishna Balram temple in Vrindavan based upon the Indian architecture. Prabhupada says he likes the Govindji temple and he wanted some of the features from the temple to be incorporated into this temple, like the open courtyard and the front steps leading to the deity darshan area. And he said that this will be the grandest temple in Vrindavan, and many rich people from Delhi who are also devotees would love the chance to come live with us on the weekends, and for them it will just be like Vaikunta. And he says that if you do not construct something wonderful, it will be a discredit to American boys. And like this Vrindavan project is one of the most important of ISKCONs. Gurudas was careful to keep in touch with Prabhupada, but he neglected certain important things in the Vrindavan project, like such as digging a well and getting city approval. And Prabhupada writes that even though he wanted a temple which was built like Govindji's temple, there have been many letters, but nothing has been done. and he says that I like the plan of Surabhis. And then later he writes again Gurudas on the same point. Why did it take so much time to draw a plan and get it passed? Like you took 6 months to consult so many engineers. And there was a lot of correspondence which he felt it was unnecessary. And he did not want the temple to be like a very costly building. So he was okay that even though it was a little bit cheaper than the original plan, he was okay with that. But his main concern was that a competent disciple should oversee that work so that ISKCON doesn't get cheated, because there were similar concerns in other projects where the Indian contractors would take advantage and ask for more money from the Western devotees.
Thank you. Rajaspo, please read. Rajaspo, you there?
Yes, I was on mute. Yeah. One reason Prabhupada chose Krishna, right? Or before that, whatever.
Yeah.
As early as April of 1972, Prabhupada had asked that the deities in Vrindavan be Krishna and Balram. Krishna may be black, Balaram of white, and the pose in the back of the Back to Garden magazine is very nice. He asked that a sign be put out front announcing Shri Krishna Balram Mandir. One reason Prabhupada chose Krishna and Balram as the presiding deities was that most of the Vrindavan temples were of Radha and Krishna. ISKCON temples would be unique in Vrindavan. Another reason was that the ISKCON land was located in Raman Reti, an area of forest and soft sands where Krishna and Balram had enjoyed their childhood pastimes 5,000 years ago. To celebrate and worship the youthful sports of Krishna and Balram in Raman Reti was fitting. Although thousands of years had passed since Krishna's advent in Vrindavan, so the same atmosphere and many of the same sights and sounds still prevailed. Peacocks ran across the sands or sat on rooftops or in trees. The cooing and chirping of pigeons and cuckoos and the sweep of the parrots' green wings were eternal sounds and sights of the Vrindavan forest. In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prabhupada had described how Krishna and Balram and their cowherd friends played in Raman Reti and similar places. My dear friends, just see how this river bank is extremely beautiful because of its pleasing atmosphere. And just see how the blooming lotuses are attracting bees and birds by their aroma. The humming and chirping of the bees in the forest is echoing throughout the beautiful trees in the forest. Also, here the sands are clean and soft. Therefore, this must be considered the best place for sporting and pastimes. Jai Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. So Prabhupada here is in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada is planning to have a temple in Vrindavan. And Prabhupada is giving minute details about how the construction has to happen. Prabhupada is mentioning about how the deities will be looking, what will be their color, what will be the name of the temple, and where should be the name should be placed. And the reason why Prabhupada wanted the temple to be Krishna and Balaram as the presiding deity, because ISKCON temple should be a unique temple in Vrindavan. Radha Krishna temples are many in Vrindavan, but Krishna Balaram will be the ISKCON temple. And another reason that it is located in Raman Reti, where Krishna and Balaram had enjoyed their childhood pastimes 5,000 years ago. So to celebrate the worship of the youthful sports of Krishna and Balaram in Raman Reti was fitting. So it was like, setting the scene. Prabhupada was like such an expert personality, he was giving everything like what is to be appropriate. And then Satsu Maharaj is explaining about the beauty of Vrindavan. So at this time in 1972, Vrindavan was as peaceful as 5,000 years ago. Parrots, cuckoos, and pigeons, and all those forest feeling was there. So that's where one of the prayers or one of the pastimes from Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna book is the context is taken from there, talking about the beauty of Sri Vrindavan Dham, and that's how Prabhupada is actually. So this scenario was there at that time in 72, but now if we go to Vrindavan, it's different. So yes, this is what we learn from this.
I was thinking the same thing. When I went last, I think a couple of years back, it's so much of construction. It's becoming, it's like a city now, you know.
Yeah, totally commercialized. But then again, just like Bombay land was very far away and it was not very prominent. Now that place, Krishna Balaram Mandir, is like very, very prominent. Yeah.
Expecting Vrindavan to be like the original way, cuckoos and peacocks, still there a little far, but I think all we need to see is Vrindavan through the eyes of the Shastras and the spiritual master and realize that. So now, let's see, thank you. Vijayanand Prabhu.
According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the playing of the cowherd boys with Krishna and Balrama as friends in Vrindavana is the highest spiritual realization, far beyond the ordinary religionist understanding of God, the supreme truth, whom some meditated upon as impersonal Brahman, others worshipped as the supreme Almighty, and still others considered as ordinary living entity was the eternal. Loving friend of the cowherd boys of Vrindavana, only after many lifetimes of pious activities had they become eligible to join in the loving pastimes of Krishna and Balarama in Ramanareti. In establishing a temple for Krishna and Balarama, Prabhupada wanted to offer the peaceful transcendental atmosphere of Ramanareti to all people, including visitors from abroad, commuters from Delhi, and his own disciples. Already he had received a letter from a major international travel agency requesting that he provide accommodations for tourists so that the ISKCON guest house could be included in official tours of spiritual India. People were always coming to India to tour the holy places. Unfortunately, most of the places were unauthorized or overrun by cheaters. ISKCON center, therefore, would be very important, Prabhupada wrote. Have a European preaching center and try to enlist all the tourists and hippies who come to Vrindavana. Give them nice prasadam and engage them in chanting, cleaning the temple, and reading our books. Give them all facility for becoming devotees. There was another particular significance in Prabhupada's choosing Krishna and Balarama as the central object of worship in his Vrindavana temple. Lord Balarama is the first expansion from Lord Krishna and is incarnation of Sankarshana. He upholds all the universes. The Vaishnavas, therefore, worship Balarama for spiritual strength. We can pray to Lord Balarama, Prabhupada said, to help you in your deficiency. As the source of spiritual strength, Lord Balarama is also known as the original spiritual master. As in Prabhupada's other large ISKCON temples, there will be 3 altars, and beside Krishna and Balarama would stand the deities of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself and Lord Nityananda is Lord Balarama, a fact that the Krishna Balaram Mandir would proclaim to the world. Lord Nityananda is especially referred to as the Kripa Avatara, the form of God most merciful to the fallen conditioned souls. Thus, the worship of Krishna and Balarama as Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda would emphasize distributing Krishna consciousness to others. Prabhupada also wanted to install deities of Radha Shyamsundara along with their 2 attendant gopis, Lalita and Vishaka. So here it describes about the temple details and the altar details in more detail. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the cowherd boys Krishna and Balarama as friends in Vrindavana is the highest spiritual realization, and so it was the supreme, it is the supreme truth, some meditated upon like impersonal Brahman, and others, like there are still others, they considered them as an ordinary living entity, but as an eternal loving friend of covered boys of Vrindavana, and only like after many lifetimes of the pious activities, they become eligible to join the loving pastimes of Krishna and Balarama in Ramanareti. And in establishing the temple of the Krishna and Balarama, Prabhupada was looking for a peaceful and a transcendental atmosphere of Ramanariti to all the people, including the visitors from abroad and also people from Delhi and his own disciples, so that like they will be having a, also he had a lot of inquiry, like a major international travel agency was requesting him that if he can provide accommodation for a tourist, so that the ISKCON guest house like can be included in the official tour of spiritual India. Like people are coming to India to tour the holy places, but they were like cheaters. They were cheated by the unauthorized people, and so ISKCON center should be very important. Prabhupada wrote actually, and he insisted to have an European preaching center, so that to have all the tourists and hippies who can come to Vrindavana and they can have nice prasadam and they can be engaged in chanting and cleaning the temple, and like they will be given reading the books, and also they will be given all the facility to become a devotee. And that was another particular reason or significant for Prabhupada choosing Krishna Balarama as the central deity in the Vrindavana temple, because Lord Balarama is considered as the first expansion from Lord Krishna and is incarnation of Sankarsana. So he upholds like all the universes. Also, the Vaishnava should worship Balarama for the spiritual strength, and Lord Balarama will help to clear the deficiency, and also he gives the spiritual strength, and also Lord Balarama is also considered as the original spiritual master. And like similar to other large ISKCON temples, which was planned by Prabhupada and constructed and planned by Prabhupada, here at the this temple also will be having like 3 altars, which will be like beside the Krishna and Balarama, there will be Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda deities, where Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself, and Lord Nityananda is considered as Lord Balarama, and this will be the fact that will be proclaimed to the world, and also Lord Nityananda is also considered as a Kripavatara, meaning like a form of God, which will provide mercy to the fallen conditioned souls. And also the worship of Krishna and Balarama as Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda will emphasize the distributing the Krishna consciousness to others. And also Prabhupada wanted to install deities of Radha Samsundara along with their attendant gopis Lalita and Vishaka.
Prabhupada installed very carefully, thinking, considering all this. The quality of devotees will come and how they can be get mercy of Lord Chaitanya, how they'll get spiritual strength from Lord Balaram, how they can appreciate the Vrindavan Dham, Radha Krishna's pastime. It's very wonderful, very in-depth. Srikar?
Srila Prabhupada could not possibly stay full-time in Vrindavan, and yet whenever he was away, progress slowed. Gurudasa, the temple president, had little money and little expertise in managing finances. Prabhupada called him Damn Cheap Babu, a name given by Indians to Westerners who think they have won a damn cheap bargain, although they are actually being cheated. Since Prabhupada did not trust his devotees' spending habits, he arranged for a complicated system whereby he would have to approve all ISKCON Vrindavan checks, even while traveling. When Gurudas wanted to spend, Tejas, the Delhi temple president, would come to Vrindavan and approve the expenses. Then a check would be made out and mailed to Srila Prabhupada for his signature. When the check returned to Delhi, Tejas would add his own signature and give the check to Gurudas. Although Prabhupada generally preferred not to burden himself with managing his temple, he insisted on supervising all spendings in Vrindavan down to the last rupee. But even with such control, Gurudas would misspend money, taking funds earmarked for construction and use them for other temple purposes, usually getting cheated by the merchants. After Prabhupada's 1972 visit during Kartika, he was away from Vrindavan for an entire year, directing things through correspondence. With the Krishna conscious movement growing quickly on all continents, he had many places to visit. Still, his three main projects, Bombay, Vrindavan, and Mayapur, were his major subjects of correspondence and his greatest financial investments. So it was not possible for Srila Prabhupada to stay in Vrindavan full time all the time until the temple construction is done. So whenever he was away, the temple progress was little slow. So Gurudas Prabhu was a temple president. He had very little money and little expertise in managing all the expenses. And then Srila Prabhupada would often call him damn cheap Babu. It is because Gurudas Prabhu, since he's a Westerner, he would think that he won a damn cheap bargain, although he was actually being cheated. And then Srila Prabhupada somehow did not trust his devotee spending habits. So therefore, he arranged for a very complicated system for approving all the ISKCON Vrindavan related checks. Whenever Gurudas Prabhu wanted to spend anything, Tejas, another devotee from Delhi, he was the Delhi temple president, he would come to Vrindavan, approve the expenses, and then the check would be sent out to Srila Prabhupada for his signature. And when the check returns to Delhi, Tejas Prabhu would add his signature and then give it to Gurudas Prabhu. So Srila Prabhupada generally preferred not to burden himself with managing all the temples. But again, this Vrindavan temple was a special project for him. So he wanted to supervise all the spendings of the Vrindavan temple project. But even with such strict controls in place, Gurudas Prabhu would sometimes misspend the money. He would take money from the funds which were dedicated for a temple construction and then used for some other purposes. And then they were like usually getting, and then he would always usually get cheated by the merchants. So after Srila Prabhupada's 1972 visit during Kartik, he was away from Vrindavan for almost a year. And then though he was away, then he would direct things through correspondence, through letters. And then Krishna consciousness movement was growing very quickly on all continents. And then he had many places to visit, so he was very busy. Still, these three projects like Bombay, Vrindavan, and Mayapur were his like major interest. And then he greatly invested time in them through correspondence. And then because these were the greatest financial investments for him.
Cheated, we also now being cheated. When we come from years, we don't know how to spend. Vrindavan is still this, more, not only temple, all over the Vrindavan, they know how to get people money from the, Western outside of India, residents, NRI, and all this thing. Till now, even I was hearing from a brahmachari yesterday. Till now, the same issue, similar issues is going on in Vrindavan. The brahmachari was speaking to me that how money is being misused also. Yes, Sridhar is there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Read.
One reason he did not come more often to Vrindavana was that Gurudas' letters had been very optimistic, promising a temple opening by Janmashtami 1973. Surbhi was in charge of the construction and knew well that the work was going too slowly. Yet Gurudasa would write to Prabhupada, painting a picture of imminent completion of the construction and opening of the mandira. Prabhupada was enlivened to hear the good news, and he held Gurudasa to his promise, though with reservations. If you can finish the work by Janmashtami next, that would be a very great credit for you, and I shall come from any part of the world just to install the deity. But now you must work very, very hard to make good your promise to me. Otherwise, I shall be very disappointed and become very, very angry upon you. Prabhupada warned the devotees in Vrindavana that they would have to work diligently, finishing before the monsoon season, arriving in June if they were actually to fulfill their promise. But anyone visiting the construction site in Vrindavana could understand that the building would never be finished in time. The temple area consisted of foundation lines and steel rods. Only 3 or 4 devotees were living there, struggling to organize laborers and to obtain funds and building materials. That summer was extremely hot, and each day the devotees were forced to spend the afternoon lying down in their huts, exhausted from the heat. Prices for cement and steel had doubled. Yet Prabhupada continued to respond to Gurudas' glowing reports, encouraging him to continue with determination. Prabhupada, so one reason for which Prabhupada wasn't visiting Vrindavana more often was that Gurudas' very optimistic and promising letters that he would be completing the temple and the opening would be done by Janmashtami 1973. But Surabhi, who was in the charge of construction, knew that the work was going very slowly, and Gurudas is painting a picture of imminent completion of the construction and opening of the mandira. So seeing that, Prabhupada was very happy to hear this good news, and he held Gurudasa that whatever promise he made would be fulfilled. So he said that by Janmashtami, if the work is finished, then it would be a very great for Gurudas. And wherever he is, I mean, in whichever part of the world he is in, he would come to install the DT. So he said that they should work very, very hard, uh, and the promise which he had made should be fulfilled. Otherwise, he said that he would be very disappointed and become very angry upon him. So, Prabhupada also warned the devotees in Vrindavana that before the monsoon season, the work should be finished and their promise should be fulfilled. So, but anyone who is visiting the construction site in Vrindavana, they would think that this wouldn't be finished on time. On the temple area was consisting of only the foundation lines and steel rods. Only 3 or 4 devotees were struggling to organize the laborers and to obtain the funds for getting the building materials. And that summer was extremely hot, and the devotees were forced to spend the afternoon lying down in their huts. Um, and even the cement prices and the steel prices had been doubled. But Prabhupada continued to respond to the Gurudas' glowing reports, and he was encouraging him to continue the construction with determination.
Nice. So many, it's like nothing is done. But Gurudas is very loyal, and Prabhupada that's great. Okay, sorry for that. Just a second. Pranath Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. But Prabhupada could also read between the lines and he cautioned Gurudasa, I simply want to see that the work is being carried on vigorously and the money shall not be used to pay bad bills. The money should simply be used for construction. Talk of a temple opening by Janmashtami gradually disappeared, but Prabhupada did not express his disappointment. Rather, he continued to encourage and push the devotees onward, asking that at least his own room be completed so that when he visited in October of 1973, he would have a place to stay. When Prabhupada arrived, however, his quarters were far from completion and he had to live for a week in the home of a Vrindavana friend. He did not remove Gurudasa, but he tried to teach him better management and accounting. He also wrote to his India GBC secretary, Tamal Krishna Goswami, to get more funds for the Vrindavan project. So I have arrived here in Vrindavan, but so far the project is concerned. Why the money is so irregular? TGS reports that in the past 3 months you have sent rupees 5,000 and Since then, nothing. How will the project go on? Inspired by Prabhupada's presence, the devotees rallied. They held a little festival on the land, erecting a tent and decorating the foundation posts with banana trees and flowers. For several evenings, Prabhupada lectured before a crowd of about 50 local people sitting on folding chairs in between the foundation lines. Prabhupada was determined in his desire. He wanted a temple as much as ever, and the small band of disciples in Vrindavan were convinced of their mission to erect that temple. They knew they were building a temple not merely as their own local project, but as something very important for the whole world. Prabhupada said the next Janmashtami, August 1974, as the new grand opening. So, Gurudasa was was not able to, Prabhupada was not very pleased that the construction was not progressing, and that that he wanted the work to be carried out vigorously, and that money should be used for the construction purposes and not to pay any bad bills. And the plan was to open the temple in by the Janmashtami of that year, 1973, but that was not going to happen. And although Prabhupada was disappointed, he didn't express, but he encouraged and pushed the devotees, and at least asking that his own room be completed, so that when he visited later in the year, that he would have a place to stay. But the time had come. In October he returned, but the quarters was not ready, and he lived for a week at one of his friend's place in Vrindavan. Although Prabhupada did not remove Gurudasa, but he tried to teach him better management and accounting, and he wrote to Tamal Krishna Goswami to get more funds for Vrindavan project. And he was also concerned why the money is so irregular, and that there was only 5,000 rupees that came in the past 3 months, and so that was not sufficient, obviously, for the project to go on. And Prabhupada inspired the devotees by his presence. They had a festival, erecting a tent and decorating the foundation posts. And then for many evenings, Prabhupada lectured, to about 50 people. And Prabhupada was very determined. He wanted a temple, as his desire was as strong as it was ever. And the disciples who were there were convinced, and that it was not just for those disciples or for the local people, but that it was something very important for the whole world. And Prabhupada finally set a target, said that the next Janmashtami, August 1974, that there should be a grand opening of this new temple. I think I stopped there, Prabhu.
Nipa? Nipa, you're there?
Surabhi, Surabhi had considerable architectural and construction experience, but he had never worked with such an ornate building before. He doubted, therefore, whether they could finish in a year's time. Tejas wondered whether they could raise the funds in time. Gurudasa was becoming more competent, and he assured Prabhupada that they would meet their deadline. Shubala had wanted to stay in Vrindavana, but only on the condition that he be relieved of management, free to chant and wander in the groups. But he had long since departed for the West. Those devotees who remained committed to Vrindavana knew that, at least for the present, the real spiritual path in Vrindavana was one of the hard labor, anxiety, combating elements, and working as pure instruments in the service of Krishna's pure devotee. In February 1974, as Prabhupada was traveling eastward from Los Angeles, he wrote Gurudasa that he would like to come to Vrindavana as soon as his residential rooms was completed. And he asked that when that would be. Gurudasa consulted Surabhi, who said 1 month. Trying to be more positive, Gurudasa invited Prabhupada to come and move into his quarters in 3 weeks. But Srila Prabhupada telegrammed back that he would be coming in 2. So Surabhi was having considerable experience in architecture and construction, but since he had never worked with such a huge building before, he doubted therefore that it could finish in a year's time. And Tejas wondered if they could be able to raise the funds in time. And Gurudasa was becoming more competent, and he assured Prabhupada that they would meet the deadline. Shubala wanted to stay in Vrindavana, but he wanted to just be relieved of management, chant, and wander in the groves. And he had long departed for the west, and devotees who remained committed to Vrindavana knew that. And that for at least the present scenario, the real path to spirituality is like in Vrindavana was one of hard labor, anxiety, combating the elements, and working as pure instruments in in the service of Krishna's pure devotee. In February 1974, Prabhupada traveled from Los Angeles. He wrote to Gurudasa that he would like to come back to Vrindavana and as soon as the residential rooms were completed. And Gurudasa consulted Surabhi and replied saying 1 month and trying to be positive. Gurudasa invited Prabhupada to come and move in the quarters in 3 weeks of time. And Srila Prabhupada telegrammed back that he would be coming in 2.
He should come in 3 weeks. Now Prabhupada said, I'll come in 2. How, Prabhupada knows without pushing it won't move. Anyway, Samla.
At that time, Prabhupada's house had no roof or floor and only portions of the outer walls. Suravi began a marathon construction effort and hired 2 work crews, one for day and one for night. 2 weeks non-stop they worked, drastically cutting corners. They plastered and painted simultaneously, and as a result, the walls remained wet. A few days before Prabhupada's arrival, they put down a temporary floor, bricks covered with cow dung, covered with rugs, covered with seeds. The weather was cold and the house had no heating. The morning Prabhupada arrived, the devotees all gathered with him as he sat happily before his desk, praising their achievement. He said, if they could keep working like this, they could finish everything before Janmashtami. Almost immediately upon his arrival, Prabhupada began to manifest the symptoms of a cold, but he would not hear of moving to another place. This is my first house, he said. Now I am going to stay here.
Very well. So Prabhupada, when he said I'm coming in 2 weeks, by that time there was no roof for Prabhupada's room, and it was only portions of the outer wall. Now he began a construction marathon and hired 2 work crews, and day and night they worked. It says that the walls remained wet, and in both plastering and painting they went simultaneously. So somehow or other they managed to make it a floor also with rug and everything, where the cold is coming. So Prabhupada came and Prabhupada said happily, if you continue like this, you could finish before Janmashtami. So when he came, he also began to manifest the symptoms of a cold, but he would not move because he said, this is my first house. He said, now I'm going to stay here. Wow, such a beautiful, and I can't believe like this. Prasanthi, please.
The large brick and stone room was simple and austere and remained dark during most of the day, but Prabhupada considered it his Vrindavana residence. Soon local distinguished visitors began calling on him, and he received them warmly. discussing Krishna consciousness hour after hour in his room. In the evenings, he would lecture there and hold a kirtana. Prabhupada had a problem to face in Vrindavana. Gurudasa had informed him that Mr. S wanted to take back 50 feet of the donated land, claiming the construction was not going quickly enough and that he had never intended to give the front portion. He was thinking of using it for shops, maybe even a petrol pump. Prabhupada was alarmed. For Mr. S to take back the front part of the property would ruin the temple scheme and make a farce of the gift. What good was land without proper access to it? On further inquiry, Prabhupada learned that Gurudasa had not yet received the actual deed. Prabhupada was greatly disturbed, yet he proceeded calmly and intently. Gurudasa, he said, should immediately secure the deed from the registrar and construct a huge brick wall around the property. Prabhupada's secretary wired Mr. S, who was away from Vrindavana. Hare Krishna, Prabhupada now in Vrindavana until the 13th. Now settle up front piece as promised.
That's funny, eh? That's smart.
So Prabhupada started giving lectures in his room. Many guests would also come and talk to him. And Prabhupada would lecture for many hours, hour after hour in his room. And Prabhupada considered it his Vrindavana residence. And a problem was coming to Prabhupada in Vrindavana, as Mr. S wanted the front portion of the land, and he was thinking of having a petrol pump or some shops over there. So he wanted 50 feet back, and Prabhupada was alarmed because that the temple access will be taken away, and it would not be good for the temple. So initially he asked for the deed, and Gurudasa told him that the deed was not given, and it is still in progress. So Prabhupada was greatly disturbed by that, and he said first they have to get the deed done immediately, and the second thing is to erect a wall around the temple premises. And Prabhupada's secretary wired to Mr. S immediately, and that Prabhupada is already there in Vrindavan, and they want to settle the front piece of the land.
Did you see what Prabhupada did? This is a typical thinking of the man. He gave it a condition that if you don't construct on time, I will take it back. He had given, and it was not moving. Now he's changing his plan. Okay, I'll make a petrol pump and money. I'll get money from all these things. Now Prabhupada acted very smart. He first constructed all the walls around, and now when he comes, he's going to see that. Oh, now he cannot ask much. Anyway, so hope you all had a good reading. I'm very grateful for everyone joining and relishing this. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Tomorrow is a very special day.
Yeah.
It's sannyas. Prabhupada took sannyas tomorrow.
Oh, is it? Today?
Yeah. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay. Thank you so much. Today is also Haridas Thakur's disappearance day.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Have a good night.